Time for the big reveal. After a much needed break, we are back at the Project Workbench YouTube station with an update on the MattMobile project. You may have noticed there's two of them now. They're multiplying. This one right here is the, what I'm calling the Mark III MattMobile, since it's my third shell, and this is the Mark I over here. Today I'm going to be working on a couple different things. Let me show you. So I've got this front area that's plugged up from the mold making process. I'm going to cut that out. And I've also got the same thing over here on the sides, on the side intake. Just this flat surface right here needs to be cut out. So that's pretty low-hanging fruit. What's going on here in the cockpit is I blocked out where I want the floor pan of the cockpit to be, which will allow for optimal placement of the Recaro seats. Now, of course, it's not set in place right now. I was just moving it around. But that's what's going on there. And the whole idea behind there is that is all geometry that's needed for the custom chassis that I'm going to get made. So one of the challenges on the Mark III shell is the missing scoop here. But what I did was I made a mold from the Mark I. This is actually the remnants of it. You're just looking at some leftover PVA that I still need to clean up. And I'm going to use that mold to cast up a replacement scoop, which will go on there. So that'll be cool. The real challenge to the Mark III shell is twofold. Long story short, the front doesn't really match the rear along this seam line. I really don't know why. Like, I don't know what the history here is. It seems to me, if I had to guess, the front hood is actually from a different car than the rear body. That's the only way I can wrap my head around it. But hey, comment in the comment section below if you can think of any other reason for this type of mismatch. So what we're looking at here, see this gap here? It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. But up here, there's contact. Big gap there, same over there. There's contact right by where that Sharpie is, big gap there. So for some reason, the hood just doesn't mate up properly with these lines here. Now, I have an approach to fix that. I'm basically just going to reshape this arch. I'm going to cut a bunch of material out so that this gap here closes, and same thing with that gap over there. Those are going to close up because I'm going to reshape this arch. Not a big deal, but like it'll mean I have to, I'm going to lose some geometry here. Like this shape right here is going to go away because I'm going to be cutting into the shell right here. You know, probably like 1 inch of that's going to go away. So do I resculpt that? Don't know. Also, there's a lip in here. There's a flange in there. That's the bunch of that's going to go away. So I'll need to rebuild that. So that's sort of issue number one with the Mark III shell. The other issue is this piece right here sort of flares out. Not sort of, it does flare out. Probably 5 inches. So this whole thing needs to be heat formed back into place. I'm probably just going to set up a couple space heaters, maybe get a propane heater, heat it up to over 150 degrees, and then build some kind of jig so that I can apply pressure evenly on this thing and maintain it over time to sort of just press it back into place. Hopefully that'll get me like 90% of the way there, and then I can just use traditional body sculpting methods, you know, Bondo sanding, to get the last little bit done. Other than that, there's a bunch of really interesting things about this body, like the fact that it's got the little step plate built in there. It does not have a lip here, which is actually screen accurate. If you look over at the Mark I body, there's this lip here that goes all the way around the canopy. That is inaccurate. The screen used cars do not have that lip. Like this lip is there, but then it comes down and basically trails off right there. And the whole canopy just drops into this. It is not supported by that lip. So the good news is I don't need to create that in this car because it doesn't exist on the screen used car. The other good news is it has this piece molded in. This does need a little cleaning up. Like in photos, this looks really good, but when you get a closer look at it, you can see it's got some some roughness to it. It looks like it's been in and out of clay a couple times. So I'm either going to need to really tighten that up, or I might just take the metal ones that I have, make a mold of those, cast them up in fiberglass, and then just nuke this whole thing, basically just router this out, and then lay in a replica. Who knows? The other thing about this shell, I would say, is the rear end is very nice. That's not something you hear me say a lot, but the whole anatomy on the rear end is very good. It is not misshapen much. It needs a little cleaning up. There's a little tightening up that needs to be done. Like this flange needs to be pushed out a little bit, but not much. And I think one of the challenges of the Mark I shell is this whole rear end needs an entire reworking. You can't really see it from the video, but trust me, like there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just different, right? So there's just work that needs to be done. There's work that needs to be done here. It's just different. The Mark III shell also has an accurate trunk lid. Interestingly enough, it is molded in place. It is not a separate piece. That's fine for me. I have the ability to separate that and build up some flanges around there to make it work. The Mark I shell, if I understand the history of it correctly, has a custom sculpted trunk lid, so not original. And they also have these flanges, these lips built into there, which are also inaccurate, not on the Hero car. Not really a ding. I don't mean to trash talk the Mark I shell. It has a lot of great advantages to it. It's just different than the screen used one and different than this one. I mean, you could argue these are equally dingable, right? This one might be screen accurate, but it's molded into the shell. It's not separatable. The other thing to note about the Mark III is it doesn't have gas cap recesses, which is fine because, oh look, what's that? A gas cap recess. I've actually already molded these and cast up replacements. So that's not a problem for me. The little portholes are also filled in, not a big deal also. I would say overall, I feel like the Mark III shell is a superior shell, even though it has some things that need to be done to it. I feel like the wheel wells are more symmetrical. They're placed properly. This has the front bumperettes molded in, which is fine for me. I kind of prefer it that way. And just the overall, having the two of them side by side really gives me some good perspective on identifying like the pros and cons of both of them. They each have strengths and weaknesses, don't get me wrong. I think I prefer the Mark III just because it seems to have the anatomy and the geometry of it just seem more, to my eye, accurate to what you see on screen. And don't get me wrong, like I have a lot to say about the Mark I shell. It's a piece of art. It's beautiful. I love it to pieces. It's just different. I don't think I'd try to convince someone to buy one over the other. They're just different. They have different strengths, different advantages. But I suppose if you have any questions, you can write in the comments section below, or you can direct message me and I will answer as honestly as possible. Oh, the other thing about the Mark III is the gun doors are molded into place, which again, for me is fine because I don't plan on doing machine guns. So having these pretty clean gun doors that are already in place, they're helping to maintain stability of the front of the shell. Like that, for me, that is 100% perfect. I have zero complaints about that, but some builders might see that as just additional work that they don't want to have to do. All right, so anyway, I'm going to take a stab at cutting out these plates, and I'll get back to you with some progress. The first thing I'm going to do is use my trusty Ryobi drill with a big honkin' drill bit. What is that? 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch? And I'm just going to drill some pilot holes in this and the surfaces on the side, and that'll give me a place to put the jigsaw into so that I can start that cut, and also give me places where I can turn corners and stuff. Well, that was super easy. Barely an inconvenience. I forgot how soft fiberglass is when you're using metal tools. I've gotten used to, more robust materials like aluminum and steel that just take a lot of work to get through, but those just took me like 30 seconds to drill those, so that's great. Let's do the side ones also. For those of you who've been watching the channel for a while, you know how much I love working on the floor. I've often thought of rebranding the channel as the Project Floor Space, since that's where I seem to do most of my work. So let's just drill a couple holes in this so I can get that jigsaw started. All right, that's it. Really not that complex of an operation. The question is, will I want to attack this from the front or behind? Probably the front, just because I don't want to have to get into the car to cut it out. But who knows, maybe I will. Let me see. I've changed my mind. I think I actually will attack those from the inside. There's a little more working room and I don't have to worry about that lip around it getting in my way. And yeah, I will take the seat out first so I don't get it any more messy than it already is. These Recaro seats are not cheap. This is the tool I'm going to use to rough out those shapes. I like it because it gives a certain degree of precision and it also tends not to run away from me too much. Like if I was using a reciprocating saw, those are just a little harder to control. The blades are a little thicker and frankly they're just a lot more powerful and they can kind of take over and go a little too far. So let's get some power on this, get some safety goggles on, and see what we can do. I've changed my mind, by the way. I am going to tackle it from the outside. The risk I run if I do it from the inside is I cut into that lip, which I don't want to do. I'd rather leave a wider margin and have to go back in with a grinder to knock it down than to chew into the lip and have to go back and rebuild it. Before I start, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a very important piece and underrepresented and underappreciated bit of my toolkit, and it is hearing protection. You know, when you've got your face up next to these tools a lot, you can really have an impact on your hearing over time. So whenever I'm doing anything like this, like some sort of spinning machinery, I tend to wear earphones just to sort of knock that sound down. And it also makes just the whole process a little less unpleasant too. One little pro tip I want to give is you can never underestimate the value of a fresh blade. And there's an argument to be made, which I think is a bad one, that using blades until they're dead will save you money, because it's true, it will. But I think for me, I'm just at that age where my time is more valuable to me than anything. So if it takes me twice as long to do something with a dull blade, or I can just cut through it like hot knife through butter with a fresh blade, for me, I'd rather just spend the extra $1 or $2 on the fresh blade. So, and that's true of like a lot of disposables, like sandpaper, blades, saw blades like that, anything that spins, always go with a fresh one, even if it costs you a few bucks. All right, the basic process here is really simple. The thing with this type of saw is the way it works is you just need to have downward pressure and then forward pressure. It doesn't move itself, so you've kind of got to feed it. And I think what I'm going to try to do is cut within this lip. So that'll leave a lot of room that I need to then clean out with the grinder. But as I said before, I think that's the right decision. I suppose we shall see. All right, let's give it a try. Okay, so I can't lay it flat all the way, so I am going to ride on this lip. Let's see how that goes. Oh, forgot my much touted earphones. Clearly, I'm not one to take my own advice. It's interesting, I can almost feel the blade dulling as I go. It loses traction pretty quickly. Now you notice to get into this lip, I'm cutting about 1.5 inches away from that surface, so that is going to mean a lot of grinding, but we'll make short work of that with the What's the tool? My angle grinder, yeah. That'll crush it. All right, let's try from the other direction. Oh man. Ow, it's hot. I think I'm actually going to switch blades. Wow, look at that. The teeth are definitely, I don't know if you can tell, but it definitely took some of the bite out of the teeth. Interesting. So these blades are probably made for wood or something soft, and this is slightly too tough for it. I mean, it's still going to get the job done, but that's a lot. All right, so let's try a new blade. Yeah, they literally say wood on them. So let me see if I have any steel blades in here. There's something a little stronger. I don't think I do. That's fine. Wood'll do the trick. It just softens up pretty fast. All right, let's move on to another blade. Okay, let's give this a try. Well, some things never change. I just did about 5 minutes of work thinking the camera was recording, but instead it was not. The old press record to stop, to start, yeah, it's a big mess. So let me show you what I was doing, and then I'll walk you through my little TED talk I gave about tools. So I've got this angle grinder with the flapper wheel on it, and it just chews through this stuff really quickly. Let me make sure it's recording. It is. Okay, great. So this is a great little lesson here in tool choice and how they work. So I'm making really brisk work of that lip using this angle grinder, but I'm making a giant mess. There's dust going everywhere. I need to put on a respirator because it's causing up a big ruckus, an olfactory ruckus. So really, like, I've got a couple tools in play here. I've got that jigsaw, I've got my reciprocating saw, and I've got my angle grinder. Each of them do different things. So the angle grinder, the reciprocating saw will give you fast work. It'll chunk through this, but you're gonna lose precision. So you run the risk of cutting into this surface. Now with the jigsaw I used, it's nice and slow. I can get a high degree of precision, but remember there's some limitations. Like because this lip was here, I didn't want the blade riding up, or the guard riding up on here, so I dropped it down in here. So I sort of made the choice to have a larger lip here, knowing that I could just grind it away. So the point here is really, you need to decide what's important to you. Is precision important? Is speed important? Is a clean shop important? Like all those factors come into play where you're picking what tools to use for a job like this. Anyway, I'll take a run at finishing this out. I need to go get my respirator, and I'll come back and show you when it's done. This is about as done as it needs to be. Got the basic shape roughed out, and just like with the windows on the canopy, there's still some fine tuning to do, but most of the meat has been removed, and that's what those power tools are really good for. And the passenger side intake is all done too, or done as it needs to be. It made a giant mess. I think in hindsight, what I should have done was spent more time with the rotary cutter, taking out as much as possible. Like just grinding, sanding that lip down, just made a giant, giant mess. I don't think I'd do that again. In other news, this is the mold I made of the scoop on the Mark I car, and I'm going to cast one of these up and stick it onto the Mark III. Pretty cool. Turned out okay. Got a couple cracks in it, but those are easy to repair. When I was pulling it off, it just stuck. So I had to get some wedges under there, and a couple of them made little cracks. You can see right along the top. There's a split, easy to repair. This is all epoxy resin. And right in line with the process that I'm doing over on the main body right now, I also need to cut out the windows on this canopy. And I think for this one, I'm just going to forego the jigsaw altogether and just start with that cutoff wheel, the fiberglass cutoff wheel, not the flap wheel, the cutoff wheel, and just make short work of that. There's just a lot of real estate to cover in that canopy, and I don't want to just be, I don't want to spend an hour with the jigsaw working on that. So that's the plan for this guy. Just wanted to give a look at this before I lay into it with that angle grinder with the cutoff wheel. Last shot of it with the windows in place. Let's see what we can do with this beast. Took about 5 minutes using the angle grinder and that fiberglass cutoff wheel to cut the windows out. Just went really quickly, which is about what I expected. And this is great. So what I'm going to do next is switch over to that flapper wheel and go in and clean this out. Basically get it down to the point where all I need to do then is a little sandpaper work. While I'm here, I wanted to talk about this canopy a little bit. You'll see there's a texture in the gel coat. There's little crevices, and there's also some surface features. So that is the result of a layup being done in a silicone jacketed mold. The gel coat is repelled by the silicone, and so that's why you end up with all these little textures. It's not a big deal because overall the canopy has really nice macro anatomy. I'm very pleased with it. But the micro anatomy, as I call it, is kind of a train wreck. Like these are pretty deep right here. And basically all it means is the entire canopy needs a pass with sandpaper and filler putty to fix all these little imperfections. Now, you could say that's true of the entire body too. Like the whole frickin' car needs a once over, maybe a twice over. But the canopy in particular, because of the way it was laid up, it just lends itself to more labor. Not a big deal, just more work that needs to be done. All right, with that said, I'm going to switch over to that flapper wheel, like I said, and clean out these windows a little more. That work ended up taking a lot longer than I thought. The initial cutting out took mere minutes. The grinding and sanding took, probably about 45 minutes on both sides. But overall, it's right where I hoped it'd be. So, there's still a little bit of meat on the bone. So if I go back in, I can still sand. See, there's a little bit there left to be sanded back. That's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to go down and start biting into the gel coat right here. So I've still got a little bit of sanding to do, and that's perfect. So yeah, I'm going to call this part done for the day, and I want to head back inside and finish up those side vents. A little bit of a wider view of the canopy. As you can tell, it's nighttime here, but man, look at all the mess. Highly recommend you do this work outside, but still wear a respirator and gloves and eye protection. Man, I am old because my back is killing me right now. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results. That is a good couple hours worth of work. I think what I'm gonna do next is I'll go in with a sanding block and some really low grit sandpaper, finish cleaning up that edge, and then I actually need to clean off the inside too, because the glass is supposed to lay flush in there. So I need to grind down that lip from the inside also. So still a lot more work to do on the canopy, but that was some ugly manual labor that needed to be done. And that is my butt print on my car. Even though I'm kind of out of room in the workshop, I've still got room to move the body around just so I can get at that other intake vent over on the passenger side. I've kind of got the front clip rolled out to the edge of the door, and then the back half is just a little akimbo. Also wanted to show you this little flange that's part of the shell. Very nice addition. However, I think a lot of it's going to end up getting cut away just to make everything fit together. But this is something that you don't usually see in MattMobile shells. This whole flangery. Like I know the version 1 shell actually came as one piece, and I had to cut this line here And obviously there's no flange in there at all. That would be something I would need to build later. So really the theme of this video is, you know, strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages, and balancing those out, making the most of the advantages and figuring out ways around the disadvantages. In other news, these are the gas cap recesses that I made. I basically just pulled molds off the Mark I shell, made some rigid castings, and then these are ready to just be glassed in to the Mark III. While I've got the camera out, let me just show you the inside of the front hood. You can see there's a little distortion there that's going to need to be straightened up. But this is what that flange looks like on the inside. And a bunch of that's going to get removed when I go to mate those two surfaces up. So what I'm going to do now, and I think this is where the video is going to end, is I'm going to make a template of this shape here, this arc along this edge. I'm going to make a template out of a giant sheet of styrene I have, and then what I'm going to do is use that template to transfer it over to this. And I'll just draw it on, and I'll use these flanges as the starting points. I'll draw on the shape, and then I will use similar techniques to what I've been using today to hog that out so that these two surfaces will mate up properly. I decided to go with just a big piece of cardboard instead of styrene. The plate of styrene I had wasn't big enough to cover the whole width of the rear end, so I just taped a couple pieces of cardboard together, and now I'm going to get some weights and hold it in place, and then just take a Sharpie and trace along the line underneath. Should be pretty easy. Like so. I'm making good use of R2-D2's center leg there just to add some weight. So I centered this off. You can see there's 1 inch of the little grill peeking through right there. I basically just centered it off the other side. So that's how I know it's mostly straight. It doesn't need to be precise, just needs to be held in place. So now I'm going to take my handy dandy fine point Sharpie, go underneath, and then trace out that line. Before I draw out the line, just wanted to give you a look underneath there. You can see the cardboard is sitting very flat on that surface, which is great. That's exactly what I want. So now I'm just going to take that Sharpie, draw it along this line, go all the way across. You know, it's not every day that the way I envision things in my brain actually work out in real life, but this is one of those days. Looks like I've got a really nice clean arc transferred from the shell to cardboard. Looks good. I'm pretty happy with this. Next step is to cut this out. I think I'll do that right now just to make this sort of one more thing I can accomplish this sash, and then I'll lay it on the hood just so we can see what the difference is between the body and the hood. I would say this turned out pretty good. So the top piece is the one I'm going to lay on top of the hood, flipped over. And yeah, I think this turned out great. I'm very happy with that. Great success. All right, so I'm going to tease you into this. So you can see I've laid the cardboard on top of the hood, and I've lined it up pretty well on this surface. It's good enough, and that's the surface that mates up with this edge. And I've done the same thing on the other side. Well, spoilers. Okay, so it's lined up, but check out how much I need to remove to make it line up. What's interesting also is, see there's a lot of space here too. The contour of this is much sharper than of the other side. Now what I don't know as of right now is which side is going to match the canopy best. And that's going to be sort of my North Star. I'm going to use the canopy as the guide post to line up this thing. Or I should say along this edge, this curve here. But anyway, so you know, this is a 3/4 of an inch right here that all needs to be chopped out in order for this surface to match up to this surface. And that's kind of what makes me think that the front might be from a different car. The other thing that I need to really line up is the hood latch. So see that slot right there? That's where the top of the hood latch goes in. And there's a matching slot right there. Those are off by an inch and an eighth. So the whole front hood needs to move this way about an inch and an eighth for those to line up. And looking at that, I mean, you know, that probably, that space right there, this distance here, may very well be 1 1/8 inches. So there it is. So next step is really to just take a Sharpie and draw a black line along this cardboard and then start chopping up the front. And like I was saying, this whole flange, I'm going to lose this. So I'm either going to have to rebuild that or do without. But, you know, knowing that I'm going to have to reshape the hood to match the body or vice versa, I think losing that flange will just make that operation that much easier. But, you know, like with every body kit is a kit. It needs work, right? It doesn't come out of the mold flawless. You have to do some work. So it's not like I'm upset. This is just part and parcel of working on a fiberglass car. Because, you know, I'm a giant pro. I ended up just scribing a line in the front hood using a little file. Turns out black Sharpie got too dusty and wouldn't leave a mark. So that's pretty clear, that little line. You can see that's where I'm going to cut away. So I think tomorrow I will save that and just come in and I will use what I learned today when working with the front intake and the side intakes and apply that knowledge on this piece. And then the next big trick is we shall see how the body and the front clip fit together. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys that. I thought I'd end this episode with a nice little view of my own private Gotham City laid out before me, and thank everyone for watching the video. Please like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. You know how this works. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has been encouraging me to continue these videos. They're not always easy to make, and sometimes I'm not always in the mood to make it. Sometimes I just want to make progress rather than videos. But it always makes me happy to know that there's people out there who are enjoying the videos, who are learning from them, or just like the build. So thank you everyone for all of your ongoing support. This project's been going on for a long time now. Many years, more than 10 years. And I guess I'll keep making videos if you guys keep watching. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching. And as always, we will see you for the next one.